Hi friends, welcome back to my little cozy corner of the internet. Today I'm going to cover with you guys some of the books that I read in 2022, and I'm going to introduce them in 3 different categories. I'm going to have loved them, hated them, or not really sure, just like kind of an honorable mention, like I liked it but I didn't love it but I didn't hate it kind of a thing. And I'm going to start out with the ones that I loved. I'm not going to take too much time doing an intro, I'm just going to dive right into it. So the first book that I have is kind of an obvious pick. It was my most recent read that I finished. I have a 40-minute video on it of all of my feelings. But the first book that I loved was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, and I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did. I go into this in that other video if you wanted to watch it. Basically, without any spoilers, I'll just say that I loved this book to a fault, to the point where I needed to take a break until I read the next one in the series. It's actually quite interesting, just to give a little snippet of what I did say in that video, that it can be really dangerous to read fantasy books for me because I get too immersed in the world and it kind of like emotionally really messes with me. It gives me a lot of like flashbacks to high school. I had a typo in my last video. At one point I meant to say that I was like super addicted to playing World of Warcraft in high school because that was like my escapism from my depression. I had really bad depression, and so going into fantasy worlds helped me, but also kind of made it worse because reality didn't really compare to that. Anyway, I know this is like really deep for like a book kind of a video, but I just wanted to throw that out there in case you're like me. I really did like this book. I was kind of harsh on like the last like 20 minutes of the video talking about some things that really bothered me, but like overall I really like this book. There was lots of adventure, there was some decent character depth with a few of the characters, especially like Tamlin and Lucien. Lucien was my favorite character. I loved him so much. I thought he was so witty and fun and just had a lot of great banter. There was a romance in this book which I really enjoyed. By the end of it, I was kind of like overall, this is just a really fun, exciting, adventurous book. Action, romance, dialogue, pretty much all the things that you want in a good book is in here. But like I said, if you're like me, it can be dangerous, so just consider that if you want to read it. This morning I was watching a YouTube video by Tyler Zed on his education, which is more of like a comedy slash political kind of a page. He talks about like funny videos and TikToks and stuff, and one of the things that he had talked about this morning, which I thought was really interesting since I'm talking about this right now. And it was a guy that had posted a TikTok and he had said like, men, we can't compare. When your wife is reading books about a man who's 6'6", dark hair, a chiseled body, lives in a giant mansion with all the gazillions of dollars, totally sweeps you off your feet, has a 10-foot wingspan. And I was like, oh snap. And Tyler Zed was like, yep, men, we can't compare. If your wife is reading books like this, just prepare yourself. And I was like, yikes, because I feel like that's really accurate for a lot of people, sadly. Like I had mentioned in my other video, like I never want to compare these fictional characters to my husband. Like that's a horrible, awful thing to do. So that's also part of the reason why I'm taking a break until the next one in the series, because I was like, oh my, like this is just sounding too good. Like these characters, the love interest, it's sounding way too good, and I don't want to get caught in that comparison trap for something that's not even real. So the next book that I loved so much, I actually finished it probably this time last year, so the beginning of January. I might have finished at the end of December in 2021, but I'm pretty sure I finished it in January of last year, and that is Once Upon a Wardrobe by Patty Callahan, and I adored this book so much. This book is about a little boy named George who is obsessed with the story of Narnia, and he wants to know so badly where the idea and concept of Narnia came from. So his sister is actually a student in one of C.S. Lewis's classes, so she takes it upon herself to ask C.S. Lewis where Narnia came from, where he got the idea from, and everything like that. Now of course C.S. Lewis is very imaginative, very artistic, while the sister, her name is Meg by the way, is very mathematical, intellectual kind of a person. So the way that C.S. Lewis is explaining things to her just isn't really clicking that well. It's just a whole story about her learning the imaginative side of that while explaining it to George, her little brother, and it's just such a beautiful book. So beautiful. I have like an insane amount of tabs in this book, and it's kind of funny that I was just talking about like fantasy and imagination because I opened it up just now and the first quote that I see is, "With stories I can see with other eyes, imagine with other imaginations, feel with other hearts, as well as with my own. Stories aren't equations." I couldn't recommend this book enough. I love it so much. It's so cozy and fun, like the perfect read for a really beautiful ambience in the background while the snow is falling and you're all cuddled up and cozy. It's just the best. The next book that I loved, of course, I recently read this as well. A lot of these are kind of more recent, so I apologize if you've been watching my videos and this is kind of repetitive. But this next one, I know that there's quite the split on it. You either loved it or hated it because it's kind of like a Hallmark kind of a book, but that's kind of why I picked it up. And that's The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox. My first romance, and I loved it so much. It was so cute and witty and fun. There is a set of twins that swap lives for a week because of some issues that happened, and of course they end up falling for a man in the other sister's life, and it's just so cute and fun. Like I said, a lot of people didn't like it because it was very like Hallmark romance, but like when I pick up a romance book, that's kind of what I want to read about. I love like the cheesy kind of romance with like the cute cliche quotes. Like, it's just cute and fun. I didn't have any tabs in this book, so it's not like a deep philosophical kind of a book. It's just a really fun, cute, lighthearted romance. So I really like this. I thought it was cute. It's perfect for like the holiday season. Again, snow outside, just chilling, all cozied up. I really like this. I think I rated this 4 out of 5 stars because there were a lot of typos in this book and it really bothered me. The next book that I really loved, again, kind of a more recent kind of a read, but this one emotionally destroyed me. I like sat down after I finished it and just stared at the ceiling and cried for like 20 minutes. It was so good. And that's Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. This is a thriller book of a family who's like all kinds of twisted and toxic, and they go to their grandma's house for the holiday every year. I think it was Halloween, but it's also the grandmother's birthday on that same day. So the whole family gathers, and when they're at this home, the tide comes in and cuts them off from leaving the house, so they're like trapped there until the tide goes back down. Throughout the night, like each family member is getting like picked off, like one murder after another. The first one to go is Granny, which that's not a spoiler, it says that on the back. It's just wild turns, wild twists and turns that I did not see coming. I was so surprised when I was reading the reviews and a lot of people were like, that was so predictable, and I'm like, what? Like, I did not see this coming at all. When I read like the twist at the end, I was like, what? I freaked out, and I was telling my husband about it, and I'm like going like this because I was just so shooketh. I had no idea that that was coming. I thought it was so good. Loved this book. 5 out of 5. Alice Feeney's amazing. I also read her book Rock Paper Scissors last year. That was so cool. The year before last year, I guess. That was so good. Again, crazy twist, but anyway, definitely recommend. Such a fun thriller. It'll keep you on the edge of your seat, and I just could not put it down. I loved it so much. Okay, so the next book that I loved this book so much. Again, more of a recent read, but don't worry, I'll get into books that I read further back in time. But this one that I loved so much is The Maid by Nita Prose. Now, I just want to put out a disclaimer that I understand why people didn't like this book, but I will get into that in just a second. So this is about a maid named Molly. She is the sweetest, cutest person to ever grace humanity, like as a fictional character, I guess. But she's just so sweet. Molly is a maid at a beautiful, luxurious hotel. She loves her job. She's so good at it. And she stumbles upon a murder of a man named Mr. Black. And Molly basically kind of helps solve the crime in a way. So the book, I think, in my opinion, is more so watching Molly put together the pieces of what happened as opposed to the reader trying to figure out what happened, which I personally really loved that perspective. It is never said directly, but it appears that Molly has autism, that she's on the spectrum somewhere, which is why a lot of people didn't like this book. So I noticed that on Goodreads, a lot of people were really angry because it didn't just straight up say it. So one girl was like, they're treating it as if autism is a disease and a bad word, which I understand if that's your perspective, but for me, I thought it was beautiful that they didn't use any kind of like straight up word to say it, that they just let Molly be who she was without having to label her as anything. I have lots of friends who have autism, and I think it's a beautiful way to be. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there has to be a label for that. But again, I understand why people feel the complete opposite way. So either way, I think your opinion is valid. I just wanted to give that kind of disclaimer if you decide to pick this book up of whether or not that's going to bother you, because like I said, they never directly say it in this book. You can just kind of tell by her actions, the words that she says, and the way that her mind kind of processes things. But I thought it was absolutely beautiful. This is the first and only book that I've ever read from a person's perspective with autism, so I thought it was wonderful. I loved this book so much. There were a lot of really great quotes in it, really inspiring. Molly is so wonderful. She sees the best in everybody, and I just loved this book so much. I definitely recommend this one. It was a 5 out of 5 read for me. The next book that I absolutely loved, I don't currently have a physical copy of because I let my brother borrow it like 3 months ago, and he just now got to chapter 5. So I'm just patiently waiting to get this book back, and that is Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shea Earnshaw. I loved this book so much. It was a 5 out of 5 for sure. The dialogue was just so wonderful. It was so on point with who Jack and Sally are, and I just loved it so much. It definitely will change your perspective on Sally and Sally's story in The Nightmare Before Christmas, but in a good way in my opinion. I really liked it a lot. I understand again why some people didn't, because they feel like it just didn't make much sense, but to me, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I definitely was like this a lot when I was reading it, because first of all, Jack and Sally are so flippin' cute. This is not a spoiler, it's on the back, but Jack and Sally get married and they leave their wedding to go straight to their honeymoon in a different world, and it was just so cute and wonderful and beautiful. I absolutely love Shea Earnshaw's writing. Some people don't, because she is very descriptive. Like my brother was actually annoyed that she over explains things, but I personally love that. I love it when authors take like 4 sentences to describe one little thing. Like I love it. I'm a romantic. I love things that are detailed and described as really beautiful. So if you don't like that kind of writing, you might not like it, but I would still encourage you to read it because it was just so wonderful and cute. There was action in it, there was romance in it, there was trauma in it. Like it was just overall a beautiful story, and I loved it so much. It was definitely a 5 out of 5 for me. A perfect cozy fall read in my opinion. Okay, the last books, I guess, the last series on my loved list is a series that I read at the beginning of the year, more so in like the spring summerish time frame, and that would be An Enchanted Garden Mystery by Bailey Cottrell. So again, this is a series. So the first book is Daisies for Innocence, and look how cute these covers are. Like, are you kidding me? The garden and her little corgi and the cat. I just loved it so much. The second book, I'm pretty sure this is the second one, and this is Nightshade for Warning, and then the third one, Marigolds for Malice. This series was so stinking cute. Oh my goodness. It was my first cozy mystery, and I'm obsessed with the genre now. It's just so stinking cute. So this series is about a woman named Ellie who owns her own business in her small town called Poppyville in California. She makes her own essential oils, like literally makes them herself from her garden in her back, like in the back of the shop. And she sells oils, but she also sells custom perfumes, and then she makes things like lotion bars and bath bombs and all those kind of fun things. And then she also has her tiny house in the back of her shop at the other side of the Enchanted Garden. So she kind of comes across different murders that happen in the small town, and she takes it upon herself to kind of help solve them. And there's a really lighthearted little bit of a romance that goes on, and it's just so sweet and cozy and fun. I finished this series really fast. It's a really quick read, but I don't really know what else to say other than the fact that it's stinking cute, and if you love plants, definitely pick this up because I actually learned a lot when I was reading this. And of course, cozy mystery bonuses that she has like recipes and blends and stuff like that in the back, so I thought that was really fun and cute. I definitely recommend this series. It was so cute and fun, and I loved it so much. Okay, so the next little section that I have is books that I did not like, and there were only 2 books on this list. So I pretty much liked everything that I read last year, which is very nice. But I will say that there were aspects of both of these books that I did like, but overall they just did not hit the mark for me. The first one, is a very, very popular book. I feel like everybody knows about this book and you either absolutely loved it or you absolutely hated it. My opinion is kind of half and half. I will say that the first half of this book I loved it, and then the second half of this book I absolutely hated it. And that is Bunny by Mona Awad. And again, I feel like most people loved this book because of how weird it was, and I completely understand that. The first half of this book I was like, this is so weird. I love it. I love how crazy things are. I love like the whole concept of loneliness and wanting to belong in places. Like, I just loved the overall theme. I loved the dialogue. I loved the unique characters. Like, I thought it was wonderful. But then like halfway through the book, all of a sudden I feel like it went from weird and fun to like, haha, I'm trying way too hard to be weird and quirky. I don't know, the first half of the book was a good weird. The second half of the book was like a try hard kind of a weird, if that makes sense. And feel free to disagree with me. I mean, maybe I'm just not intellectual enough to understand all of the weirdness in this book. I don't know, it's just the second half, it just seemed like it was trying way too hard to be quirky and unique, and it just kind of ruined it for me. I do have a few tabs, not like a super ton. I did enjoy a lot of this book, but I did not enjoy all of it. I feel like it had potential to be really wonderful, and I know for a lot of people it is, but again, the second half just started to make less and less sense to me, and then I just kind of like got lost and couldn't wait for it to be over. The next book that I absolutely hated and this is going to be really random because I feel like a lot of people, again, loved this book, and that is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. And I hated this book. I'm sorry, but I hated it. It's about a bunch of people who went to Oxford together, boys and girls, and then they kind of get back together like once a year to reconnect and do something fun. And this year they went to this like a retreat area. Basically, one of the girls is immediately murdered, and then you spend the entire book not knowing who's murdered, but to me, I was kind of like, well, obviously. And then by the end of the book, you found out who murdered her. I think that was a great concept of like not knowing who was killed for the entire book, but to me, it was so incredibly obvious who it was. And the whole train ride to like get to who did it was just a waste of time. This book was just really boring to me. I couldn't get into it. It was just predictable, and there were just really random, like gross, nasty scenes. By the end, when the killer was revealed, it was just weird. There wasn't enough information about that person to be as shocked as we should have been, if that makes sense. I mean, I guess the writing was okay. Characters were like incredibly toxic and horrible people. I just thought it was really annoying and boring. But then there was also this other plot that was happening at the same time. I feel like this book was just a mess. Like, I think that's the word I would use to describe it. This book was a mess, and I didn't enjoy it. So, I don't know. Maybe you'll love it, but I couldn't stand it. I thought it was annoying. Okay, and then the last category of books that I have for you, I have 4 of them, and these are books that I was just kind of like, huh, yeah, like, fun, but not like super exciting. Like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. Didn't hate it, but eh. So the first one in this category, again, is kind of a more recent read, and that is Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I really liked the story, so I have a whole other video on this that has a bunch of spoilers, but I feel like I was really harsh in that video because I had just like recently finished it, and I felt like there were a lot of like plot holes. Maybe, I don't know if plot holes is the right description, but I did like this book. I really did. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I was just kind of like, okay, it was pretty good. Like, I could use some more, so I ordered the rest of the series the other day. I think it's coming today or tomorrow, so I'm very curious to see what happens in the other books. But overall, I just think there was a lot of missing information or not enough information about certain things. There was not enough character development for me for Mare, who's the main character. In this book, there are people with red blood and people with silver blood, and the silver bloods are more like high class, kind of a royalty kind of a class of people, and they have like these supernatural abilities. The red-blooded people are just kind of like they're kind of servants to the silvers. Basically, they live in like slums and everything like that. Long story short, Mare, who's the main character, is red-blooded, and she basically falls into some kind of fortune where she gets to go live at the palace and pose as a princess, and it's a whole thing. But she ends up having abilities as well, which should be impossible considering that she has red blood. So the concept is fantastic. I think the story is really, really great, but I don't think that we got enough character development out of anybody. I will say that the ending, kind of a twist, was really fun. It was really exciting. So I'm curious to see what the other books can bring, but overall, I really like this book. Didn't love it, didn't hate it, kind of disliked a lot of it, so I'm kind of in the middle on this. But again, I'm excited to read the other books and kind of see if my opinion changes and if I do start to love it a lot more. I think this was Victoria Aveyard's first book, if not her very first, then one of her first, so I'm assuming that she'll probably grow a little bit more as a writer as we get into the other books, so I'm really excited to see how everything changes and grows from here on out. The next book on my list is another book by Shea Ernshaw, and that is History of Wild Places. And I really like this book. The only reason why I didn't love it is because there is a massive spoiler in the beginning of this book. I'm not going to say where because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. If you catch it, I did not catch it, thank God. I remember reading it and I was like, wait, hang on, what? But it didn't like click for me, so I just kept reading and it was fine. But when I was looking at the reviews on it, there were so many people that were upset because they caught that spoiler at the beginning of the book and it kind of ruined everything for them. So that's the only reason that I'm not like, oh, I loved it. I do have an entire separate vlog on this one. I was really emotional in that vlog and talked about something like kind of personal, so just be aware of that if you decide to watch it. I do have a lot of tabs in this book. Shea Ernshaw is infamous for one-liners and beautiful wisdom and the things that she says and how she says them. So far, I've loved everything that she's written that I've read. I have her newest book called The Wilderness of Stars and I can't wait to get into it. Anyway, so if you don't know what this book is about, it is on Book of the Month, so if you want to read like a quick little synopsis, they'll probably describe it better than I can. But basically there's a woman who's an author and she goes in search of something to write her next story, and in the process she goes missing, so her family hires a man named Travis Wren, I think his name is, to go and find her, and then it like changes the plot. So not the plot, but like the perspective. Then the next thing you know, they're describing this like land. It's called pastoral, and basically it's just people who live off the grid in the middle of the woods. They live off the land, they live off like rainwater, they garden their own food, they sew their own clothes, all of that because they believe that the outside world is full of like a sickness and a disease that will kill you, so they're not allowed to leave pastoral. I don't want to say much more than that because I don't want to give anything away, but I really like the story. I think it was pretty fun. Apparently there's a lot of other stories that are similar, so I'm not really sure if this was like a completely original idea, but either way, I really like this book a lot. Just be aware and don't pay too close of attention at the book in the beginning, I guess, so you don't spoil it for yourself, but overall I'd recommend. I think I gave this like 4 out of 5 stars, so it's pretty fun. I really liked it. It was really cool. The next book that I have was again more of a recent read, but don't worry, the last one is from a while ago. And this one, again, I'm just not sure where to put it because I was so disturbed. And that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This book was so messed up. So I didn't want to put it in the love it because it's a horror and I hated that concept, but I didn't want to put it in the hate it either because it was so good. The writing was fantastic, the action was fantastic, the descriptions, like everything was so great, but it was just so incredibly disturbing. So just like some overall warnings that I was not aware of when I picked this book up is that there are like really detailed descriptions of people being tortured. Again, I was not prepared for that at all. I picked this up thinking it was a thriller, but nope, it's a horror book. So if you like that kind of a genre, I definitely recommend it because it's really intense and fast-paced and really cool, kind of gets your mind going. There's a few twists that kind of like brought me back for a second. I think I'd probably give it 4 out of 5 because like I said, the story is amazing, but it's just not my cup of tea as far as the genre goes. Okay, the last book that I have for you guys is one, again, that I read I think in the springtime, and this one is more so in this category because there are some trigger warnings and it kind of can potentially ruin like parts of your childhood. And that's Darling Girl by Liz Michalski. This is a Peter Pan retelling and it was so good, but it's very very dark. So this is about a woman named Holly, and yes, it is Holly Darling. She is the granddaughter of Wendy Darling. So she owns a skincare company and she has two children. One is named Jack and the other is named Eden, and Eden is different. So she's been in a coma for like many years, and it's kind of a weird, twisty kind of a situation, and I can't really say why without giving it away. So Wendy, of course, had adventures with Peter Pan and Neverland and everything like that, and Wendy's daughter Jane did not have any adventures with Peter Pan, and she's kind of resentful of that because she's jealous and she wants to have that adventure. Holly also had adventures with Peter Pan. Now, I want to tell you that in this book, you don't get anything light and frilly fairy tale, like you don't go to Neverland, you don't have any kind of like sweet, beautiful magic. That is not what this book is about. Holly has different adventures with Peter Pan that are kind of like dark and out there, and I don't really want to say it because I don't want to spoil anything, but just be warned that it's not a fun, happy romance. It's the opposite, if you know what I mean. But basically, this entire book, Holly is hunting down Peter Pan for answers for something. So I can't really give more information than that without giving stuff away. But like I said, I would give it 4 out of 5 because the story is amazing. The characters are really interesting. There's a lot of depth to them, which I appreciated. But again, this is kind of dark and twisty, and I just don't want it to ruin Peter Pan for anybody. I know a lot of people in the reviews said, well, this just ruined the Jeremy Sumpter Peter Pan that I loved since 2005. And I had to try really hard for that not to happen, and thankfully I think I was successful because I love that movie and I can watch it just fine. But this book is a dark side of Peter Pan, so just be warned. So that is all that I have for you guys. That wasn't a super ton of books, but it was enough to get me through the year pretty satisfied. Again, there were only 2 of them that I didn't like, but overall, I'd rate most of these like 4 stars and above, aside from the ones that I hated. So I think that's a pretty good reading year. I'm pretty excited to read more this year. I have been taking a break since I finished A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I picked up a thriller the other night, and hopefully I will get back into it and get out of this like weird emotional slump that that book put me in. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm really grateful that you guys are here and that you watch my videos. I would love to see you guys over on my Instagram and just chat about books. I need more bookish friends, so thank you so much, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!